kind of thought we saw a lumen appearing compared to the cores that were at the center of the droplets. And that's what I'm trying to show in the next slides, to convince you. I can organize a future session outside in next stuff if you want. It's very, very troubling. Maybe you'll see. No, it doesn't want. I don't know if I should stop altogether, or my talk is based on pictures a lot. I mean, what I can tell you is that we checked all the structures with the scanning electron microscope and immunofluorescence, of course, and the cells are organizing very differently in the networks and on the tube. We can find really tight junctions where the cores are formed that are not present at the tube, and the lumen is opening following a development-like pattern. And I can go on without showing you how, I'm sorry. Oh, they're there. Perfect. Maybe we should move the screen and not the people.
Okay, this it's going to be a little struggle. We decided to have a 5-minute break so that the guys can see if they can fix something. So please just relax and we see what we can do.
I have time. Shall I go on? Okay.
Please wait.
In the meantime, you can look at the tube. Without you knowing, I just gain a few minutes, which is good for me. I think we can just use the screen if you want. I remember this one.
Okay, we will turn off the big screen to shorten the delay, and we try it with the small
keep
one
going.
now. So sorry for this. Sorry, Mathieu.
No worries. I understand it's nobody's fault. So I was telling you that we use scanning electron microscope to look at the structure. So if we focus on the monolayer that's forming around the droplet, because the cells are still organized on the glass substrate, it looks, of course, it's preparation for a scanning electron microscope. You can have some detachment here, but it looks like a monolayer of cells where if we actually focus higher, you can see a lot of philopodia and really nice cell-cell tight junctions. If we now focus on those parts here that look like cores, they're actually named cores for a reason. You can have a look there. They're very, very thin. Look at this scale here. It's 5 micron wide, and you can still recognize the cells here with those, some philopodia, less philopodia. Cell junctions are apparent here. Very thin multicellular cores, not really tightly close together, we were happy, at least when we looked at some pictures from actual liver, we can still keep the fenestration of those endothelial cells, which is very important. Some maybe vesicles are appearing there, so it's kind of keeping the phenotype that we want, but still a lot of opening non-mature junctions are there on those cores. And if you look closely, you will see no apparent adhesion of those cores with the ECM around. Of course, below it's attached, but they can detach very easily. If you go too fast in changing the medium, they will go away, basically, and no relationship with the ECM that's around, which is again the Geltrex. So now we switch to Geltrex, which is an alternative to Matrigel. So you can play with both, it works with both. But all the pictures I will show now were made with Geltrex due to a lack of Matrigel for a few months. I'm sure you've all suffered from that. So now I'll show you step by step what we have realized is happening in the formation of the tube that's made on the outer part of the droplet, which is the one we're interested in. So after a few hours only, you can see that cells are approaching the edge of the droplet, and Jimena is now quantifying. We found that depending on the distance from the edge, they are migrating towards the edge or they're just moving away. But the ones that are migrating are forming a train of cells, which you can see from the top here using a confocal microscope, where the laminin is really dense. And if you look from the side, you will find that this train of cells is actually a train of cells that are climbing up, at least in pairs, sometimes 3 cells. They are climbing up the droplet here, where you can see the nice contact angle of the dome on top of the glass. So sometimes it's easy to find the dome because it traps a lot of secondary antibodies, so it's seen in fluorescence. But you see here some cells are climbing. And here another proof of cells that are climbing. Is that they're tensing it slightly, and in a similar way that you can play with a napkin outside and just stress it like this, you will see it fold spontaneously if it's soft enough. And we believe the tension of those cells, we are still in the process of quantifying that. It will be outside the scope of Jimena's work, but we are keeping that work. But we always see that here cells are folding, and you can see the membrane here, they're touching each other. Here you can see another type of immunofluorescence. Now laminin is in red, and we found that similarly to what you find in vivo, that was reported last year in Drosophila, this folding in the plane or outside the plane is always related to or correlated with an ECM depletion at the sites of the folding, which is very intriguing to us because we don't really know how this is happening. Laminin is not going anywhere, and we believe it's, again, because it's stretched like an elastic band, it will go thinner and thinner. So we see this folding, and after a few hours, the folding finishes by closing cells on top of each other. Basically, you get this type of structure, which would be like a cord of different cells on top of each other. But the difference with the cores that I showed you before is this one, you have laminin all the way around, like a blanket, if you like. I remember very, very clearly, Jimena was telling me, I can see it's like a blanket. The cells are pulling the ECM. I couldn't see how they were pulling and from where they were pulling. They're actually folding it. But because you have ECM all the way around and it's actually a laminin ECM, you can imagine it's like a wave that's coming at you. Laminin is signaling endothelial cells as the basal side. So if it's signaling endothelial cells on the basal side, we look at podocalcin, which should be an apical marker in the formation of a vessel. And podocalcin, which is basal at the beginning, should go apical if the signaling is working well. So imagine this wave. You're looking at the wave from the shore in this image, and you will see how it's closing. And after a few hours, podocalcin is localized at the apical site. Laminin is around, podocalcin is inside. Here you have a diagram to help you realize what I'm saying. So now we are in the process of trying to find if this tension is actually responsible for the folding in the videos that we took. I'm sorry I don't have anything better than that today, but that's where we're going at the moment. What we did actually is to quantify this displacement of the folding from the top. You can see the edge of the dome is moving towards the outer part, and it always corresponds to the width, more or less, of the tube that we find. So we think that now what we have is a tension of that arc here while the dome is going on top of those cells, folding them and creating a tube. So here you see the displacement that we quantified over a set of videos, only up to 20-25 micron more or less, going outwards. And we found one really good spot where this tube was in formation under the electron microscopy. And you can see it's like a blanket that comes around the cells. So the cells are trapped inside. We don't see them here. This is what it looks like when it's folded. You can see here that tight junctions are getting mature. They are coming there. They are actually joining the cells together. Phalloidin is also organizing in a different way compared to what we had before. And this is what it looks like at the early stage of this folding process. So it doesn't look like the cores that I showed you before. Now you have a relationship with the ACM around. You can see here slightly where it's attached and how it's folded. You don't see the membrane of the cells anymore. And after a few hours after that, in some regions, you will see a lumen appear like on those immunofluorescence images that you see here. The gel is here, it folded on top, and thanks to the polocalexin apically, we have a lumen formation in that tube, and this is what the tube looks like in the end. So now we believe we are staining collagen 4 because now we believe this looks very different from what I showed you before. Cells are actually secreting ECM, and hopefully we can find laminin and collagen 4 colocalizing, and this would be a good sign for us of a maturation of a tube. Of course, if you know about vessels, you will know that we lack flow inside, even outside. So that's exactly what we are trying to do now that we understood all those 4 stages of the lumen formation, which is basically summarized here in this diagram that Jimena did. High laminin density, train of cells, under tension, they will fold, and they will open the lumen that will not be preserved if we don't have flow. So just for the last minutes that I have left to talk to you about it, I don't know how we are with time, but stop me whenever. Perfect. Wenjin is a postdoc now in our group, and she decided, let's go for a straight tube instead of a circular tube if we want to perfuse it. So she used the same Geltrex gel between 2 PDMS slabs that you can see here. This is the diagram. And endothelial cells from the liver formed tube structures at the edge again. So it's not the same shape. You see the droplet is not going up anymore. It's going down, but it's still folding it, which is working well. We have the same structure after 5 to 6 days. Also, we believe maturing, also with polocalexin staining. This one doesn't look that good, but I hope you can trust me on that. So we have the same process happening. And what we saw that was really interesting and intriguing also is that the cells are following, like the wave that's coming and never stopping, never ending, is going all the way around the PDMS, where we don't have any Geltrex. That's very puzzling. We don't understand how. But it's still forming a tube around the PDMS. And after 18 days, once, we found a really long tube, 2 centimeters in length, that could be cut from the ECM and hopefully perfused. So we tried to perfuse it with ink. On that day, we didn't have anything in the lab that was able to actually label anything inside the tube, but the ink was actually got inside after a few hours. So we believe it's perfusable. It's science fiction, if you like. We're still in process of repeating that because we don't understand how it's going around the PDMS, but we believe it could be really good for interfacing organ on chips. And now what Wenjin is doing is trying to add some interstitial flow on top of those tubes, so around the droplet and around the PDMS layers that I showed you, using this type of very simple chip where we have the Geltrex droplet and the flow around it, and we already see a difference in the shape of those cells, and we'll see how they behave in the folding and maybe maturing. And very preliminary results, but we saw that our tubes maintain their angiogenic process capabilities. So if we have a VEGF gradient along a collagen gel inside this chip, we are seeing sprouts coming towards the gel that could help us a lot in perfusing those vessels, Because, and that's my last word, those vessels are very, very small. We tried to perfuse them with very thin capillaries, even for electroporation. Nobody has managed to do that. So if you believe you can do it, let me know. we'll pay you huge money to try. And it's just a joke. We don't have huge money. But we are trying to perfuse them passively to attract them and anastomose them with a microfluidic chip system, and that's where Wenjin is going in her postdoc. So with that, I thank you for your great patience. Sorry for everything that happens, but I hope it was interesting to you, and I will take some questions if we have time.
Okay. Thank you, Mathieu. Well done. Bravely mastered this challenge. So, are there questions in the audience? I think we have time for 2 questions. Yeah?
Thank you.
How do you think this tubulogenesis relates to how Hautefeuille cells form tubes within an encapsulated hydrogel, where they don't have this flaw?
It's a very good question. Actually, what I learned from literature, because I haven't done it yet, is that for inside the gel you need stromal cells, or at least medium from stromal cells, to help the capillaries to form. In this case, we don't. We just use endothelial cells medium. So I think it's very different, and I don't understand the difference between them yet. I'd like to talk to people who know how they are formed in the gel, and then we can try to find the differences. But I just tried to, just to recall something. In the liver, you have this regeneration capabilities of those cells, so maybe they have something. Maybe it doesn't work with UVEX, we haven't tried, or with different endothelial cells. They are specific liver cells, and maybe that's why they can do that. You're welcome.
Okay, here's another question.
Hi. So I just have a question in the sense that, so now you're seeing vascules, which are not vascules, tubules, which are around 5 to 10 micrometers. Are you starting to, using your SEM image, were you able to see some fenestrations? I don't know what type of cells you use, so.
It's a very good question. So you saw in the course the fenestration was kept. This cell line actually is famous for having fenestration up to 1 day. On the course they are kept up to 4 days, at least for what we've seen. But within the basement membrane that they're forming, we haven't seen any. We don't know if they are there, or we should have a look from inside. That's what you do in the liver pictures that you see. So now we don't know. And that's why we need to perfuse also, so we can have a better look at what's happening. But it's a very important cue that we are looking for in the future in this type of structures. Thank you.
All right, for the sake of time, let's thank again Mathieu.
Thank you.
And move on.